if we can say, I don't know this moment, I don't know you, and the beauty of that mystery, the beauty of that unknown, being right on that razor's edge of the unknown, that's where the heat is, that's where the fire is.
I am Max van Praag, and I talk with people here about love, intimacy, and sex. When you are not happy in your intimate relationship, you are basically not happy in your life. We're here to shine light on these topics and to help people have more fulfilling and more empowering relationships. Today I am talking to Amara Charles, who is a best-selling author, a coach, a mentor, and a teacher of intimacy. Amara, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Max. It's lovely to be here with you.
And you wrote a book called
The Sexual Practices of Kwadoshka.
What does that mean?
Well, the word Kwadoshka means the coming together of two individual unique energies. And when they come together, something more is created. So Kwadoshka is really about that magical more that's created when any two energies, when any two people come together, there's something more that is created. And the full name is Shulakwe Kwadoshka. And what this means is that Shulakwe is our life force, our prana energy. And so it's about the magic of our prana life force energy.
And this word comes from shamanism?
Yes, it comes from the sweet medicine Sundance path of Turtle Island, and it is a shamanic tradition originating in Mesoamerican cultures.
So you teach the practices that are in the book, and you do talks, and you work with men and women. You travel all over the world, and this is your topic, intimacy.
Yes, sex and intimacy, and all that goes with that. Yes.
And how did you come to find out that this was your path?
Well, when I was in my mid-20s, I had a personal crisis. And, well, I had just graduated from California Institute of the Arts, and I got a master's degree in film. And I got a job working for ABC. I was on the top of my game. I was making more money than I knew what to do with. And in the middle of this, the peak of my success, I got pregnant, and I decided not to have the child. And nothing in my education had prepared me for the feelings I felt, the shame and the confusion. And I realized that, I just really knew nothing about the emotions that go along with sexuality. And so when my roommate came to me and she told me about this workshop. Now, I had never been to a workshop. I graduated from college and so forth. And she said, it's about sex. It's about intimacy. And I was just completely terrified, and I didn't know, anything. I didn't know what I was getting into. And, but I knew that I just needed to do something to just clear my confusion. I had a lot of doubt, a lot of confusion. I didn't know how to communicate about sexuality whatsoever, and I didn't know what to do in this crisis. So I went, and I was wide open, and this experience just completely turned my life around. I went from being an artist to, ultimately teaching Kwadoshka, and ultimately writing the book based on my experiences. And so it's been quite a journey. As you said, I've had the great blessing and honor, really, of teaching around the world, invited to many countries and many different places to help people have a more empowered view of their sex and their intimacy and all the issues that go with this.
Do people ask you if you are in a partnership yourself?
Well, of course they do. I've been in a partnership for the last 12 years, and I have a very beautiful, a very intimate relationship, and I can share as much or as little about this as.
No, it's visible. I can tell that it's yes, and it's important, and it's also not important. someone who teaches this material can also be single and or can be in a sequence of many relationships. And then people will say, well, why are you not in a long-term relationship? Well, if somebody was with the same person from for their whole life, they probably wouldn't learn the same lessons. If you go through different relationships or you have more of a rocky relationship life, then you also learn more and you have more to teach.
Well, I certainly went through my years of rocky relationships, and as you know, I mentioned, a lot of confusion and a lot of doubt, and I'm very fortunate. I feel very, very blessed to have a dear and exquisite and beautiful relationship. I'm really quite happy.
So you told me that one of the main parts of your work is women's work. Shakti Queen is the name of the workshop. Is a circle of women. Tell us about that.
Well, it's turning out to be a global circle of women, and it really starts with these small circles, and the small circles have been in existence since always, where women gather and share the most private, the most intimate secrets, and the most empowering support for one another. I really believe in the power of sisterhood to help sisters see the reflections of themselves as a queen and as a goddess, a woman who stands in the world. You might want to call her an alpha woman who has a sense of herself. She's both a warrior and a queen. She's really a warrior queen, and she's fully able to embrace her beauty and her softness and her gentleness. She knows how to nourish herself, and she knows how to stand in the world for who she is. And the women I tend to collect and gather around me are women who are seeking to really fully express themselves, both in the relationships, in their families, and in their worlds.
So, what my experience is, working with intimacy and witnessing a lot of women, is that one of the most important things that women need to learn is how to surrender more in a relationship with a man who they respect and who they're attracted to and who they really respect. Very often, women assume when they come into a relationship that they can just take control.
I do agree. I agree that that's probably, the central issue is control. And the way I view it is, women have an extremely expansive sensitivity about life. And we have the natural ability to sense things, to be aware of many, many things. It's our multiplicity, it's our multifaceted nature, the ability to have sensitivity to the nuances of life. And this is what gets us into trouble. On the one hand, we're overwhelmed by this sensitivity sometimes. And then on the other hand, we want to control it. And so what I love to share about is how can we live within the stream of livingness? How can we live in this stream of all of these sensations? And instead of taking control of it, how do we learn to soften ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Because giving up control is more power, actually, for a woman. And so you talk about, standing in your power, being independent. That's all good, but in a marriage, that's not necessarily what is called for, right?
Well, I believe that the real feminine power is right in our softness, and it's in our gentleness and our capacity for compassion. And so what we have to learn is, how do we move beyond this being a weakness and being too soft and just being, blown asunder by our emotions and all the feelings that we have? How do we take command of our emotions, and how do we learn how to find that power inside the softness? That's the real key, so that we can really express the softness that's in our hearts that we're yearning to feel. But we get so guarded because we do have to make it in the world and we do have to protect ourselves. So I say that we have to also simultaneously develop our warrior skills, but we have to find that balance between the warrior, the woman who's out there and getting it all, and the woman who is able to really turn all that off, especially in the bedroom.
Or show respect and trust, which puts him in his power, which then comes back to the woman.
Well, our job is really to birth the king, to birth the God in every man. And how do we do this when, it seems to me like, well, I have a little boy here. And so how do we manage with this little boy? How do we see that king inside of him?
Yes, because the woman may have contributed to him being like a little boy, or the man feeling criticized or disempowered.
Yes, well, as soon as a woman flips on her little girl, as soon as she acts like a little girl, maybe she's complaining, and maybe, she is feeling out of control, and maybe she gets hurt easily. When she turns into a little girl, especially in intimate arenas, when we turn into a little girl, we elicit the response of a little boy, and so we both stay there, and nobody wins. And so the reason I work a lot times with women is how do we embody and really fully embrace that more mature, more feminine, more queenly aspect of ourselves, so that we know how to not push away the little boy, not put him down, not criticize him, and not try to control him. How do we see all of that? Because, we can't just pretend it's not there. How do we see that? How do we have compassion for that? How do we have more understanding for that? There's a lot of wounding that causes this to happen, and nobody wants to stay stuck. Nobody wants to stay there. So we have to learn to have compassion first for ourselves and our own little girl. We don't even know how to treat our own little girl. How do we care for her? How do we treat her right? How do we nourish her? How do we love her? How do we embrace her? How do we accept her? If we can do this for ourselves first, then it's a lot easier to see the little boy and to, hold him, to embrace him, and not let him get away with everything, and not just brush it under the rug. But how do we find it in our hearts to say, yeah, I see the little boy, and you know what? The little boy in you is beautiful also. He really is.
Well, it may not be so good for the polarity if he is there a lot, but yes, it's nice to be seen in that part too.
Yes, you're right. I mean, we have to love and embrace this part of ourselves, but you're right. This is not the part. Little girls and little boys don't make love. They can play, they can fight, but when it comes to really expressing the full passion and the full sexiness and aliveness and the juiciness of our sexuality, that's really not the place for the little girl or the little boy.
So, Pleasure Heals. Your book is about sexual practices. Can you give us an example?
An example of that how pleasure heals?
Of a practice that a couple can very easily apply, people watching, something that they can take away from watching, and that maybe something that's not so familiar, a kind of an uncommon thing.
Well, one thing that I think is missing in most lovemaking, or a lot of times is missing in lovemaking, is that spontaneity, that place inside where we remember to be an explorer, putting on the lover's mask of an explorer, someone who doesn't know it all, someone who's ready to start over, to start fresh. I think this is the most important thing. So let's say a couple, can create a scenario where they've agreed that, let's imagine that we are just meeting each other for the first time. What would that be like? What would we do sexually differently? How can we really start over? I think that's really the main thing, the main issue is how can we approach lovemaking each time like it's the first time? And you can determine this in your mind as an adult.
Beginner's mind.
Yes, beginner's mind. And it's deeply nourishing to do this. It's a deeply loving and gentle practice to say, every time I approach my lover, I'm going to have in my awareness, okay, this is as the first time, because it actually is the first time. And so this is something that can be a lifelong practice. And it keeps passion and tenderness and gentleness and fire alive. The thing about spontaneity is, after it's all said and done, after we know all these things about sexuality, if we can be spontaneous and let it all go and not know not pretend like we know everything, if we can say, I don't know this moment, I don't know you, and the beauty of that mystery, the beauty of that unknown, being right on that razor's edge of the unknown, that's where the heat is, that's where the fire is. That's where I would say that people most need to make a choice to say, yeah, let's go there.